Welcome to Timber&Terra. I'm Glenn, and this is the continuing saga of cutting pasture spruce. I do have a playlist of these spruce that I started cutting probably too late in the winter season because I was not able to get everything cut in the winter season, and I'm not dressed like I prefer to be dressed. Short sleeves, in logging in the woods. Much rather be in long sleeves, heavy gloves, snow on the ground, frozen ground. But that didn't work out this year because it was a warm winter and I just didn't get things done in time. This was the last pasture spruce I cut. I actually did it off camera. Just a single tree, felled it that way. The top was not big enough to use, so that stayed. I was able to get a 16-foot log and a 10-foot log. I explain the use of these and the rationale for using pasture spruce for this particular application in previous videos, so I'm not going to repeat that. But pasture spruce refers to how and where it grows. It's not a species. Generally, it's going to be white spruce, which tends to have larger limbs and long-lived limbs as long as they have light, and white spruce does enjoy a lot of sunlight. Occasionally I'll see it in red spruce, but not to the same magnitude. So white spruce that grows in a pasture with the large limbs is not commercially viable. No sawmill is going to buy it because it doesn't make any decent grade of lumber, at least enough of it for most applications. You can see here the size of the limbs, and they basically go all the way to the ground. They're generally 2 inches and up, the larger ones, and a lot of them. These trees grow pretty fast. You can see here by the annual growth rings, probably about a ½ inch or so, which means about 1 inch in diameter per year that this was growing. I can't make it out on camera, but as you get towards this later life, meaning the last 10 or 15 years, the growth slowed considerably. So this is my tally. I'm looking for, I think, 2,000 feet of 16-foot. I have half of it, 1,050 board feet. Looking for about 1,800 feet of 10-foot, and I've only got almost 300. So I still have a ways to go. I'm thinking I may run out of pasture spruce before I get the tally that I'm looking for. If that's the case, I'll just take some decent size fir. I have some that are either recently died or are on the verge of dying, so I'll take those to see if the lumber is sound. So here I am sort of next to the field. The reason I'm doing it now, I would have liked to have done it a month ago, but the ground was really wet. It was muddy. It's dried out quite a bit. We've had quite a dry spell, probably at least a week. We've had quite a dry spell, at least a week with no rain. So it's still pretty wet, but I don't think I'm going to be up to my axles in mud like I would have if I tried to do this a month ago. This is actually the first pasture spruce I cut down. This was a couple years ago. I think it broke off, and then I cut it and it ended up just being rotten. You can see sort of the wormholes there. So I think I don't know if it completely fell over that way or whether it just sort of leaned into the trees. I just don't remember. But anyhow, I cut it up and just sort of let it sit here. Eventually it'll rot. But just beyond this is my next target, which is right here. And a lot of the challenge in cutting the tree is not actually cutting the tree, it's figuring out where to fell it and sort of removing any interference. So I have choices here. You can see in my tractor there, that's a road. I have a road over here. You may not be able to see it. There's actually another target spruce right there where I'm pointing. That's just on the other side of this road. So this tree is not very far from either side, either road. But there's a lot more open space this way. If I fell it basically right where my tractor is, I just have to take out a couple small trees. I could fell it this way, but I'd have a couple fir to take down. Let me give this some thought. I'll do a little survey and we'll come back when I have a plan in place. So my ideal place to lay it down, just because of the open area dealing with the tops, is going to be right here. Likely sacrifice this little fir, which is not growing that well anyhow. So to do that, I'm going to come between these two fir trees, except I'm going to take that one down. Of the two, this one to the right is better. So I'm going to take that fir down. It doesn't have much of a top anyhow. Even with additional light, it's probably not going to respond to being released. This one has a better chance. It just has a larger crown to it. This is a red maple, which is sort of firewood. I'm going to leave it for now. It could be that it gets damaged or taken down when this tree falls. So before I cut the tree, I'm going to take down that fir, a couple of the small ones around it, and just clean up and prepare to fell it. Well, this one here didn't come down as easy as I wanted it to, but that happens. You know, I was thinking I could fell it there and it would fall at least mostly to the ground. It did not. Got hung up in some of the spruce branches. So what you saw is a technique that I use, particularly when I know I can't fell it to the ground. It's a smaller tree. Just cut it and sort of let it doon, 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 way to the ground. Eventually, when there's enough room, it'll fall over like that one did, and I just cut it up. So I have two objectives in cutting pasture spruce. One is I want the lumber. The other is timber stand improvement, TSI, which is carrying out silviculture, which is basically managing a piece of forestry for a particular goal. And my goal is to have the most economic benefit and the healthiest trees for a forest, which would include diversification both in age and in species, which is part of a good healthy forest, that are conducive to this area and to this soil. So this area is, my management plan has me managing it for red spruce, white pine when it's available. There's not a lot here, but there are some. And cedar. So there's a cedar right there, which you can see is sort of trying to grow up between the branches. So removing this tree will release the cedar there and help that to grow faster. It'll also provide more light to the ground. You can see all these fir seedlings, which are probably just a couple years old, just waiting for their time in the sun, and now they'll get it. A lot of these trees, like the one I just cut, you can look at the growth rings. Even though it's a small tree, it's probably at least 3/4 the age of that one. Just because it was probably grew up with relatively suppressed light. It had competition with other nearby trees. So I'm guessing it's probably 50 years old. That one might be 60 or 70. Based on the age of all the other pasture spruce that I've been cutting in that 60 to 70-year-old range, even though they're large. So don't be fooled by the size of a tree indicating its age. Bark is a much better indication of a tree's age than is size. Okay, I do have to take this one down eventually too, since Mother Nature decided to start the process. But for this tree here, I'm going to try to squeeze it between this red maple to the right and this pair firs to the left into that sort of open area. Well, that was a complete felling failure. It fell that way, 90 degrees to where my intended fall direction was, which is this way. Yeah, so the drone was up there, anticipating the fall towards it. So I thought I was careful not to stay away from the hinge, but I cut it on this side. On purpose, I plunge cut the center because it wasn't falling, but I did not. I thought I was careful not to cut the hinge over here, but evidently that turned out not to be the case. I did have this orange wedge in here, just barely on the edge, which gave me an indication that the tree was moving, so that was the first indication that something was happening. So that certainly gave me the clue that I need to move away and let it fall where it's going to. So the damage I think was minimal. I can't remember the tree, but I can see the top of it there might have been a 6 or 8 inch diameter fir. Not the worst thing in the world, just a big disappointment on me as a feller. Okay. Well, let's take care of this jungle of branches and we'll see what we have for logs. Well, I earned an F for felling, but I think we scored silviculture wise and tree wise, log wise. So you can see a lot of open canopy now. I did estimate the rings. I counted the ones that were easy without my glasses on, but it's about 60 years old. You can see, so in midlife it really took off. So that's probably the straightest pasture spruce that I've cut since I've been working on this. As far as collateral damage goes, thankfully there wasn't much valuable. In fact, I don't think there was anything really valuable that was taken out as a result. There were 3 little trees here. You can see some rot in the middle of them. They were old and small. This one here was a bit bigger. If it had been straighter and more sound, you can see the center looks a bit punky, that I probably could have gotten a 10-foot log out of it. So really not much in the way of damage other than my pride. So I'll measure this up. I want to figure out how long it is. I'm guessing it's going to be darn close to 90, 100 feet tall. And then I'll figure out what I can get for the log lengths, either 16 foot or 10 foot. So I guess my judgment of tree height is about as good as my felling technique, my felling ability. It's only 75 feet high. I did get 2 16-foot logs, pretty nice logs. This little bit of a sort of a sweep or an offset there, as well as here, and then the second 16-foot log ends right here. And then a 10-foot log before the diameter was getting too small. So I'll move my tractor over there and drag them roadside. So that small piece you saw me take out there is I actually cut a 16-foot, what I use for bunkers for my 16-foot firewood log. So I'll lay it on the ground and then lay the firewood on top of that, just so the firewood itself is not on the ground. So these here, even though they're not lined up, I can easily get them with my log loading trailer. So I'll do that. It's still rather moist in here. Not sinking in nearly as much as I did, but it's still significant. Sunk in about 8 or 10 inches there. All right, let's go look for the next tree. Well, I think this will be our next one. This is a white spruce. Not nearly as big. This one probably would be okay at a sawmill. I'm guessing I could sell that one to a sawmill and it would be fine. The branches are generally quite a bit smaller and not as numerous as some of the worst of the pasture spruce I have. But this particular area, the management plan has me focus on cedar because it grows rather well in this type of soil. Cedar, just cedar all over the place. In fact, what's going to dictate how I want to fell this tree is there is a decent cedar right there trying to grow up through the branches. So it would be the easiest to fell it right there where my tractor is, but I'd rather fall it that way. Probably will take out that sort of little bit of a sweepy tree, but it has a double top, so it's not that valuable. I don't want to mess up this fir because that's a nice one, and obviously don't want to mess up the cedar over there. So I should be able to fell it that way. I said that before. Well, that one went much better than the last one. Looks like a nice sound straight tree. It's like the same story with growth, probably the same age as the others. And we now have a pretty nice looking cedar. It has basically all the sunlight it could want. There's the two 16-footers, a 10-foot there, and the other small one is another firewood bunk. I picked those up with my log loading trailer. So the road is goes left to right, basically perpendicular to where the tractor is. I did count the rings on this one. I counted 48. 48 growth rings, 48 years, a little bit younger than the other pasture spruce that I've cut. A lot of open canopy, just like last time. There's a lot of these young fir that'll take off. And hopefully the cedars. I do have a road that this went across that goes from that field and then meets up with that road that goes left and right. So I have my grapple on. It's handy because I will use that to scrape this up and just set it over there where the rest of the tops is. Tree and stump over there. Top's right there. Still muddy, but not quite the soupy mess it would have been even a week ago. So let's go find another tree. So the next tree I decided to take was actually decided for me. It was actually a blowdown with some butt rot. When I looked at this tree, I would have paid good money to bet that this was fir. But as it turns out, it was not. The only thing that clued me in were the needles. These are the needles, which are clearly spruce. So they easily roll in your finger. Fir will not. You can just tell by the look. They're shorter, they're sharp. I'm just getting over a cold, so I can't smell the best, but I did not smell any pungent odor, so my guess would be this is red spruce, which is, it's odd to see rot in red spruce, or white spruce for that matter. I'm looking for cones, but this tree I don't think was old enough for cones. This is the top of it. It had been down, some little cones. Yep, red spruce. Red spruce has longer cylindrical cones. White spruce will have short ones, almost like a fat wooden barrel shape. Okay, anyhow, so I was over here meandering around, and the next one I saw, which was again not a bad tree, that one. I'm thinking it's white spruce based on the bark. So from here on up, actually the branches aren't that bad. They're not that numerous, and they're not nearly as big as I'd normally see. Up there, they are a bit bigger. But again, it's crowding out. There's a lot of cedar, almost every direction from that tree there's cedar. So I'd like to let that grow. And I know I'm not going to have enough of the real nasty looking pasture spruce to get the volume I need, so I'm going to have to take something else. So this is a good candidate. Here I'm in the road, not the one that we did initially. This is about 200 feet further into the woods, so it is a bit thicker. Not quite as open, but this one happens to be sort of right by the road and is relatively clear to drop it this way. The top will likely get tangled up in these small fir here, but I don't think that's a big deal. Well, it's a very sound tree from the bottom. The branches did sort of bend over the cedar. I don't know if that'll come back up or not, but a lot more light to the other ones. So comparing these two, I'm pretty sure that's a red spruce, even though the bark looks really odd to me. The other thing that does look odd is because that's about 50 years old, same as that tree there. You can see this one didn't grow all that fast at any time during its life. Nice consistent rings, it'll make beautiful lumber. Structural lumber in particular, with the grain nice and close, relatively not free for the first 20 feet or so. Well, the first 16-foot log. Another reason that I thought this was a good choice to take down, and the growth rings here confirm it, is because what I found with the other white spruce is, you know, the last 10 to 20 years of growth have really been almost stagnant. So leaving this tree here wasn't going to get much bigger, wasn't going to get much taller, it wasn't going to grow in value as far as timber is concerned. So I'd rather take it down now while it's still sound and, you know, sort of release these cedar that are around it and have use of this nice saw log. What I ended up getting out of here were two 16-footers, and that was it. I wasn't able to squeeze out another 10. It was too small in diameter. I did grab another 16-foot for a bunker for firewood. That's what these are over here. That came from this fallen down spruce. So now I try to figure out that one. I could probably grab both of those, but I think what I'll do is I'll cut them into logs. That one I can grab with the grapple, this one with the grapple, and this one I may just grab with the cable and pull it up a bit closer to the road to make sure I can easily reach it with the grapple on my log trailer. So let's do that, and I'll tally up the footage and see where we stand before we end for the day. Alright, so here's the total. The 16 footers I have 1,615, and 10 footers 325. So I'm looking for, I think, 2,000, right here I have it. 2,000 board foot of 16 foot and 1,800 board feet of 10. So almost there with the 16 foot. Once I get done that, the 10 foot will collect quickly. But it's been a nasty day as far as being in the woods. It's buggy, it's hot, it's damp. It's like 80, I think 85. I do not like summer logging, but it needs to be done, and we've got a bunch of rain coming, so this was the time to get it done, at least work towards getting it done. So I appreciate you hanging out with me in the woods, and hopefully you'll join me next time. Appreciate it. Thank you.